Okay, so you told me a bit about kind of the values and principles and the composition of the forum, and so I was also wondering in the lifetime of the forum, from when it started kind of with just several individuals to growing to where it is now with over 100 individuals and organizations. I was wondering what kinds of work has it done in that time?
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah. In fact, I wanted to mention at the beginning that forum's birth was more of an accident than a designed one.
Yeah.
Because it's not that some of us met together with the idea that we need to form a forum and we formed that forum. It was not like that. I would say that the beginning was sometime around 2005 or something, where this Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF, that was the time they had started a project in around Hyderabad, ICRISAT, this institution, international institution which does research on tropical crops and other type of things. So there they set up an office by WWF to look at the freshwater issues. There's a freshwater initiative by them. And a friend of mine, Dr. Bishop Gujja, in fact he's the one who actually initiated this whole idea about starting the forum to some extent. So he was heading that project there on behalf of WWF. So with this initiative they had done some type of a very small documentation. I think it's about 15 to 20 cases of very well-known water conflicts in, let's say, southern part of India. So there was a small discussion or a workshop which was held in Bangalore in 2005 to discuss the draft of that report. It was 20 cases or something. So I was also invited there, and then we all discussed that type of issue. But that discussion threw open for a lot of new issues about complexity involved in when we talk about water conflicts. And it also brought to the notice that we know very little about the different type of conflicts that are unfolding in the country. And that was the time it struck us saying that we need to make a coordinated and concerted network effort to understand water conflicts in all its nuances and complexity and scales and different layers of issues involved in things. So that's how when we took a decision saying that okay, let's make a coordinated beginning, and we thought we should start a loose network, something called Forum for Policy Dialogue on Water Conflicts in India. So all those people who were there and who want to be part of that, we formed the nucleus of that group. So there are about 7-8 people or institutions that are part of that. And WWF put in some resources to start the work. So the first mandate of the forum was that to have a very extensive documentation of water conflicts in the country.
Yeah.
So the first effort or first work we did, which took about nearly 2 years or something, is to document different types of water conflicts. We're not saying that we have documented all the conflicts. That is impossible. So there are, as our book says, there are million words which is taking place. So what we try to do is that we try to understand what are the type of different types of conflicts and pick certain cases which fits into certain types.
Yeah.
So that you have a good typology developed, and there are then cases to back it up, and so that you have good case studies and things. So we nearly brought something about 100 authors together to do this documentation across the country, and so we have something about 63 case studies which came out of that effort.
And that's all contained in a volume?
In a volume. There's a book called Water Conflicts in India, A Million Rivers in the Making, which was brought out in 2008 or 9 by Routledge. So that contains the 63 case studies. It also has all the type of conflicts. Also has an introductory chapter. So what we did was that we sent these case studies, each type of case study, to one of the experts, a very well-known people in that particular area, to review them and write a review article. So they engage with those case studies, the type of common issues they're bringing out, and also what will be the approach if you have to engage with that type of a conflict. Now, for example, we brought in a person called Ramaswamy Iyer. He's one of the most known person in the country on some of the water issues. So he wrote a review piece on transboundary water conflicts. Transboundary, when I say both, includes transnational, like between India and Pakistan or India and Bangladesh, India and Nepal, that type of thing, and also interstate conflicts. You may have Most of our major rivers are interstate rivers, and there are a whole lot of conflicts around in sharing of the waters from these rivers. So you have a Kaveri conflict, you have a Krishna conflict, you have conflicts around Narmada.
Yeah.
So all these rivers are all contested terrains today. So he wrote a very interesting review piece for the transboundary type of water conflicts. We had Vikram Gujjar wrote about contending water uses, for example. You have about 8 to 10 case studies on contending water uses. So he reviewed the entire type of thing, wrote a review article. We have two people called Bharat Patankar and another person called Anand Phadke wrote a review article on the whole question of dams and displacement related conflicts. So similarly, so we got Sunita Narayan from CSE, Center for Science and Environment, wrote a review piece on privatization, because privatization is also another type of conflict which are coming up now. All type of this. So we got different people who are quite well known in their own areas to write review articles. Then as editors, the editors of book, were about 5 of us who edited the whole book. We also wrote an introductory piece which gives a whole theoretical background and how we have tried to tie up all these conflicts together. And also it has a section what could be the broad way out if you have to engage with this. It's a very broad article, but it's not that each conflict we have tried to engage with that in that text. So the strength of that book has been that for the first time we could bring together different types of conflicts into one source.
Yes.
That was the strength of the book. And also we could bring together academics and activists together in writing that. We could have just commissioned a couple of people to write all these case studies. It was impossible. Instead of that, we got people from different areas, activists who are first-time writers, for example, also to contribute. So that gives interesting, what you call, otherwise it becomes a very drab academic exercise.
Yes.
So the strength of the book is that it's not just purely academic, or I wouldn't say that it's a very serious academic work. But the strength is that it has been able to bring together all these sets of people together as a network to write this, different case studies and type of a thing. And the whole process itself actually built up the forum.
Yes.
Because also another people also got, linked up with forum's work and type of a thing. And so each state today, we have people there. We say that, okay, we have to organize something in Bihar today. We can actually count on a few people there who have been already associated with forum's work to some extent, most of the states in India. So that is how this whole forum's network could develop. So book helped. In fact, apparently the book also sold quite well because it's already reprinted in the second.
Is it?
Yeah, second reprinted and type of thing. So doing well because I think there was a gap or there was some type of a vacuum for this type of a thing.
Yeah.
So we also feel that the book is not complete also because there are other types of conflicts we have not been able to engage. For example, we have not done anything about the whole question of floods and conflicts, for example. We have not done much work on that. So at the moment, Forum is, doing this work. We are trying to document some 50 to 20 cases on different types of conflicts around flood as a phenomenon. Otherwise, very often conflicts are related only to scarcity type of a thing.
Yeah.
Now, how do you look at floods from this perspective of conflicts? So, one of our own steering committee members, Eklavya Prasad, is coordinating that effort. Or we also found that in the present book, we don't have too much of case studies from the northeastern part of India. And northeastern part of India is also, because the whole hydropower development and various type of huge projects coming up, there are different types of water-related conflicts coming up there. And it's also an area with very rich different type of ethnicity and cultural and other type of things. So it's all getting together and creating a lot of contestation between different states, upstream, downstream, communities, a lot of outsiders and resources are being pumped in because of the whole dam construction and other type of thing.
Yeah.
That is creating havoc in the traditional way of lives of people, their cultural values and all type of things. So we are already in a very advanced stage of bringing out a compendium on water conflicts in the Northeast. So there are efforts of that type of thing. So one of the first efforts of Forum, I would say, is that try to understand water conflicts through documenting and getting people together who have been working on these issues. And our premise is that understanding conflicts is the first step towards any type of even developing an approach to resolving a conflict. So that is the whole thing. Second, we also feel that a whole lot of debate or discussion, even in the popular media, about water conflicts are much more emotional than backed up by data and analysis and everything, because water conflicts are very emotive issues. and people look at the same phenomena from different lenses, depending on where you are placed.
Yeah.
Now, for example, if you have an interstate conflict, if you are, let's say, take the case of Kaveri, if you are in Karnataka, you have a different perspective, and if you are in Tamil Nadu, you have a different perspective. Data may be the same. So we take very often very chauvinistic type of stance or very localized stance about some of these issues and things, including the media people.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought that at least if you bring these things in the public, then it can create some type of public debate or informed debate
Yeah.
about some of these conflicts, and that would help in a long-term basis
Yeah.
to at least engage with some of these conflicts in a much scientific manner and type of thing. So that is the whole purpose. The second type of work we did in the forum is also to some type of media outreach,
Mm.
because we find that within the water conflict, media is a very important player,
Yeah.
either in exacerbating conflicts, to giving rise to new conflicts,
Yeah.
or even they have a role to shape public opinion. So if there are responsible journalists or media people who can engage with this type of a thing, then it can also help in resolving conflicts, or at least containing some of the after effects of type of a thing. So what we did was that we made a very conscious effort to engage with the media, print media especially. So at least in 5 to 6 states in the country, I think Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra, Maharashtra, I think Chhattisgarh,
Mm-hmm.
type of places, we tied up with one of the very leading newspapers, and we told them that let's make a common announcement to the public. Some of the states, what they did, they worked only with the journalists, the print. You have the Mufusal towns or the what you call the stingers,
Yes.
who actually create the stories at the very local levels and things. So you announce a competition for them, saying that anybody can send in a local water conflict, what they know about it, and write it in a particular way and things. And there was a committee to screen all these entries which came,
Yeah.
and the best 5 to 10 were given prizes, and they were also published in the newspaper, in those newspapers. In Maharashtra experience, we had tied up with a leading newspaper called the Lok Satta, and we got something close to 400 entries. People wrote about
Yeah.
it, different type of conflicts we have not even heard about it. And there was a committee which went through that. We organized a huge function here in Pune to give awards or
Mhm.
prizes to these people, recognize their contribution, and all the 10 selected cases were published in Lok Satta, one after the other.
Yeah.
So that gave a lot of visibility to these issues in the media to some extent. That was another effort. We had large dialogue meetings we organized between different stakeholders. For example, when the whole draft of the book was coming out, or the whole case studies were there, we put all the case studies for a discussion. So that brought to the nearly 100 people together of different type of people, activists, academics,
Mm-hmm.
policymakers, people from the law or the judiciary, media, and type of a thing, where they felt the forum's work should continue.
Mm-hmm.
We should not stop only with just documentation, but try to involve in some of the active conflicts and see what we can learn from that. So after that first phase, in which these two activities were the main thing, documentation and the media outreach, we shifted gears in the second phase, which is primarily supported by ARGIM.
Mm-hmm.
The earlier phase was supported by WWF. The second phase, which is now ending in March 2012, a 3 to 4 year period, which was primarily supported by ARGIM based in Bangalore. And there the main focus was, one was documentation itself, understanding conflicts. So we are continuing some of that work which we started in the first phase. And two more dimensions we added. One is that we started working in two or three active conflicts. One is the conflict in Orissa,
Mm-hmm.
which I am sure you are going to talk to them sometime. So there is this one of the oldest large dams in the country called the Hirakud Dam, on a river called the Mahanadi. And this dam was built around the 1950s. It was primarily designed to be a flood cushioning dam, because Mahanadi is known for its floods. So people who built the dam or conceived the dam felt that it can at least absorb the floods and can mitigate floods to some extent. And second, it was primarily for agriculture purposes.
Uh-huh.
Now over the last 10-15 years, there's an increasing trend of allocating some of this water to industries, because Orissa is one state where more and more industries and mining and a whole lot of things are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
with this whole, India is growing at 8 or 9%, annual growth rate and things. So to keep up with that, so industrial development has been the main engine of development, or that is the way the country has been growing. And within that, there are some states where, especially the tribal population and other type of, much more marginal sections are living.
Mm-hmm.
And these have been the targets of new industrialization, whether it is Chhattisgarh, it is Orissa, Jharkhand, all these places. And there are also resistance movements. So in Hirakud, people have been fighting against this type of increasing allocation of water to industries.
Why are they mostly, I'm sorry to interrupt you, why are they mostly coming, you just said in tribal areas?
I think there are two reasons. One is much more of a biophysical reason, I would say, because some of these minerals and other type of things are in the mountainous terrains and type of thing.
Okay.
That is where these communities are living. So it is like a coincidence. Second, I think is that politically they are much weaker. This whole new phase of capitalism is unfolding in these areas today and things. So, for example, it's the same thing they try to do in some of the very developed regions like parts of Maharashtra. There will be much more, people may not take it.
Resistance or-
Yeah. So these are the new areas where you get cheap labor. There are a whole lot of other factors are there, and that's why the state is now concentrating in those pockets to in the development of the industrial sector to a great extent and things. And also there are a lot of special economic zones coming up all over the place and
Yeah.
things. So especially mining related industries, whether it is coal, whether it is iron, whether it is bauxite, all type of things are coming up in many of these areas. So there has been a farmers movement, very massive farmers movement over the last 10-15 years, fighting against the allocation of water to industries.
Yes.
Now the issue is that then how do you address this issue? So we thought that forum should be able to engage with this issue, because at least contending water use or agriculture versus industry is going to be one of the very growing themes of water conflicts in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at the water use today, it is said that about 80 to 80% of the water actually goes into agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
And the remaining some part goes into your drinking water and some for your industries and type of everything. But this trend of growing industrial water use is going to be much more and much more accelerated
Yes.
over time. It's not only there, even in Maharashtra we are finding type of thing, lot of water which was projects who have been designed primarily for agriculture purpose. Now the water is being reserved for allocated for industries more and more and things. So we thought if we can engage with this, that it can create some larger learnings for the forum, because this is an issue which is going to be growing
Yeah.
over time.
Mm-hmm.
So then we discussed with our contacts and people there were working on some of these issues and type of things. So that's why the forum set up a small state center, a resource center in Orissa, and there are few people who are this one. They have a large network, and things. So one part of the work is that they're also doing a lot of research and data collection type of thing. What exactly is happening there? Because nobody knows the exact numbers. How much is actually the agriculture? What was the type of cropping pattern which was originally designed? What is the type of deviation which has taken place?
Mm-hmm.
Now you find 3 crops of paddy there. The 3 crops of paddy also means that paddy is a very water intensive crop,
Yes.
the way it is cultivated today. So that is one. And also there are other type of problems there. It's not that the entire Hirakud Dam Command or the service area, the tail end people are not getting water. Now how do you frame a conflict? The moment you frame a conflict, say that is industry versus agriculture, the internal contradictions within the agriculture doesn't come into the fray.
Mm-hmm.
There are contradictions of that type of thing. So we are also trying to bring all that into forward and see what is the type of a thing. Second issue is that what is our take on industrialization? Now are we going to say that India as a country is going to continue primarily as an agriculture society, or a certain amount of industrialization is going to take place? If that's the case, then if that's a thing, then thank you. So if that's the type of thing, then we need to also, you can't just say that no water to industries. Then we need to raise this issue of what type of industries should come up, what what extent and type of thing, what are the type of preconditions one need to put in place if industries need water, and to what limit one should give water and things. So these also need to be discussed out. Otherwise, state will on its own allocate water from going on. So we thought we should bring all these issues together. So one part of the work is that we are doing very serious research and data collection, stakeholder analysis, and what is the type of present water use, what is the type of changing rainfall pattern there, because the reservoir itself was not getting, getting filled up because the type of changes. Is climate change playing a role there? And things. Now this time we had a massive floods there. Now the way they operate the reservoir itself is also creating problems. They have not been able to, because there is something called a rule curve which is supposed to guide the way you operate the reservoir. When to open the shutters and when to release water and type of thing, so that you keep most of the reservoir empty. When the floods comes, they can absorb. But apparently there are also people saying that because they want to keep water for the industries, they didn't release this water out before the floods came in and things. That created fault of this. So there are different viewpoints about these issues. So the group there is trying to engage with type of things. So after the research is done, I think more or less the report and other things have come out. We did a couple of workshops there with the different type of people. And now they're also engaging with the different stakeholders, talking to them. What does the data show? And can we evolve something which without compromising on the needs of the agriculture? I mean, when you talk about dialogue also, we need to put certain preconditions. We are not saying that water should be allocated to industry at the cost of agriculture. But without compromising on that, can you bring in more efficient use of water in the agriculture sector? Because you need to bring in 2% efficiency. A large quantity, because 85% water goes into agriculture today. Now, can you bring in some of those changes in agronomical practices, for example? So, without compromise on people's livelihoods, agriculture-based livelihoods and type of thing, can we save water? Now, and what do you do with the saved water? Now, whether part of that can be allocated to industry on certain conditions. We are also saying that industries are also different types. There are certain basic industries which is required to be there for people's other needs to be met. Okay. On the other hand, you also find industries like bottling plants. You also see industries where they use water as a raw material and make huge profit out of it. Probably you have to take a complete note to these things. Second is that how does the industry use the water, and how does that water from the industrial setup come back to the system? So there is no quality control. Whole water, polluted water comes back into your system that pollutes the surface water bodies as well as the groundwater. So the whole question which we are posing is that it's not the amount of water the industry use, because they always say that we use only 3% and 4% and other type of thing. The issue is not how much water you use, in what quality the water comes back into the system.
Yes.
So the whole question of recycling, complete control over the water quality, local water harvesting and type of a thing, and then if the industry cannot meet its needs, then it can ask for a fresh water. First it has to put its own house in order in terms of bringing in more water efficient technologies, processes and things which are there, which many of these people don't bring in. Second, quality control. Third, complete recycling of the water, so that as much of your water requirement can meet internally and other type of a thing. And if they need fresh water and type of thing, then they should be able to invest part of their profit into water saving technologies in the agriculture side, because they can afford to, because the type of value addition which takes place in the industrial setup is much higher than what can take place in a primary sector like agriculture, for example. Now even if they put in 2% or 3% of the profit which they make into water saving technologies, that is itself is a type of thing, because there is a limit to how much water you can have. Now what the manipulation you can do is that by bringing in efficiency and more equitable sharing and equitable distribution. So unless industries invest into water saving technologies, we do say that they should not be allocated water.
Do you find that there's a trend of that happening?
I don't think there's a large scale trend or type of thing. There may be a few industries who are sensitive to these issues, but I don't think any effort is being made in that. In fact, the forum has brought in a report called that livelihoods, ecosystems and culture.
Yes.
The whole issue of containing water use, in which the last chapter talks about some of these issues, under what conditions industries could be allocated water or something. And there should be an internal monitoring system by the industries themselves. even for their own image.
Mhm.
Because today industry is seen as the villain
Yeah.
of the piece.
And it's interesting because,
Yeah.
like for instance, Coke and other bottling companies that have
Yeah.
such an obviously bad or poor track record with
Right.
very, very well-known conflicts. You see now occasionally that bottles that have that report that they're now investing in rainwater harvesting
Okay, yeah,
projects,
right,
and they're being
yeah.
advertised on billboards, commercials, and by celebrities, and also in their bottles.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, I wonder what's happening.
Yeah.
You know, if there has been a big shift, if that.
There has not been a big shift,
Mhm.
but I am sure that there are few people who are thinking about it. Now, for example, there's a group called this, what is that, CI, Confederation of Indian Industries. They have a group working on water issues.
Mhm.
They have a small water cell and type of thing. So there are, I think, some enlightened industrialists who are thinking about this issue, saying that for the larger social issues, we need to critically think about water and how industry is dealing with this water issue and things, and try to bring in more efficient systems, or saying that, or partly invest in some, providing drinking water into some villages or some local water harvesting things. But by and large, if you look at about 90%, it's a very careless attitude even now. They don't bother the type of water they discharge into the rivers and other type of thing. They are hardly anything, because if you put in systems to recycling or cleaning up and type of thing, probably they might think that you can cut into their profits or something. You know, put these systems in place. So they don't want to even do this minimum thing, unless there are people's resistance. No, people are fought against some of this pollution type of thing. So there, the industry has been forced to bring in some measures and type of things. Or there's a citizens committee in many places now, who work as a watchdog on some of these issues. So
Yeah.
those pressures seem to have worked in some places. But otherwise, on their own, I don't think industries have been, by and large, bringing anything to engage with this issue.
Yeah. What about
So I just complete this. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So the second type of work the forum at the moment is doing in this phase is that working on some of this actual conflict. So one is this Hirakud thing,
Yes.
we can do something. Second is that there's a case in Kerala,
Mm-hmm.
which is the river called the Chalakudi river, which is a very small river, and all the rivers in Kerala are very small, because Kerala itself is very small. So it has got its own problems also. It's also very heavily dammed river. I think there are about 5 or 6 dams and diversions already from that river and things. There's one new one being proposed there, which is being opposed by a lot of people and things. Now there the main issue is that how lot of these water storages or other type of things for hydropower. So hydropower requirements versus the downstream people's agriculture needs, because there are a couple of irrigation projects downstream of some of these dams and things. Now the claim of the conflict, or the area where the contestation taking place, is that the way the hydropower projects are being operated is impacting on the water availability for the downstream farmers. Now the group in Kerala, whom you will be again meeting, is dealing with this issue, saying that can we come up with a different type of a reservoir operation model, in which, without compromising too much, I mean there will be some cuts in the power generation here and there and things, or hydropower basically most of the operators are peaking power stations. Now probably that peaking has to be shifted to a base load generation type of a thing, but it can also guarantee certain steady assured flows downstream, so that the needs of the farmers are not compromised.
Yeah.
So they are coming up with a very interesting scientific model of a very different reservoir operation model. We have worked out the details there. We already had a couple of national level meetings based on that and type of thing. Now they're getting final shape to it, and also having then meetings with the people's representatives, elected bodies and different stakeholders in that area to put this forward. Because unless the Kerala State Electricity Board agrees to this, nothing will change. So can we pressurize the Kerala State Electricity Board to bring in some of these elements into their operation, then probably this conflict. So we are working on one conflict there. The forum also took a little initiative to engage with another interesting conflict between Kerala and Tamil Nadu. There's a famous conflict called the Mullaperiyar conflict. In fact, it's one of the most picturesque areas in Kerala where the dam is built. And during the British rule here, there was an agreement which was ironed out between the Madras Presidency, that was under the British control, and a very local king in Kerala, the Travancore king, who was very powerless compared to the British and the Madras Presidency. And it's more like a one-sided agreement in which in fact Tamil Nadu is not even a riparian state of that water. Something about 900 acres odd has been given to Tamil Nadu on a 999-year contract, lease period, which is never heard.
Wow.
Yeah? And they can harvest the entire water from the 900. It's a very heavy rainfall area. A dam called Mullaperiyar was constructed to store this water, and they have been diverting this water to Tamil Nadu completely. Kerala benefit is only get some bit of a, let's say, a bit of a tourism type of thing which takes place around Periyar Lake or something. Now this dam is something about 113 or 114 year old. Now people in Kerala, especially downstream of the dam, they are feeling very insecure, saying that the dam can burst anytime. So the whole conflict is around the issue of dam safety. This first time people are talking about dam safety issue, because people have observed some type of leakages from the structure, and there have been a whole lot of technical committees which have been appointed to look into the whole safety issue of the thing. Experts don't agree on many of these things. Many experts, I mean, if the expert group is appointed by the Tamil Nadu government, then they take a very different view. Experts of Kerala government or their appointed people take a different view type of a thing. So there has not been an agreement on the safety issue of the structural strength or the safety of the dam itself, even among the experts. Now, can we do something about this conflict? So we tried to hold a large meeting in Delhi to invite in both Kerala and the Tamil Nadu, this one. Kerala came, Kerala Minister of Water Resources came, he gave a speech. A lot of members of Parliament of Kerala came, a lot of people came, but nobody came from Tamil Nadu. It was better fun because they didn't want to engage with this issue. So we have not left this issue, but we are trying to see what can be done.
Yeah.
So we are saying that there are 2-3 issues which are involved. One is that safety is an important issue. No expert can guarantee. If mass of people feel threatened by this dam, which is 113 and 14 years, then we should take that serious. In fact, in one of the training programs the forum did in Kerala, we took all the participants to the dam site. There's an agitation going on for the last 2 years continuously. People are sitting there agitating. And we found that we went to some houses, the women were saying that during the monsoon season they literally pack all their bags and keep, so that if there is any news of dam burst, they can run out and thing. Children are insecure and that type of thing. So there's a lot of social psychological problems which people are going through. On the other hand, we say that okay, there's a type of agriculture which is developed in Tamil Nadu based on this water. So you can't also tell them that you can't give you water and type of a thing. Now Kerala is saying that we are committed to give water to Tamil Nadu, but we need a new dam. We say that yes. Now new dam means there will be little more submergence. So a lot of environmentalists are against constructing a new dam. So one of the arguments is that can we keep the height of the water lower and transfer this water to Tamil Nadu, and they can have build up their storages there and store this water, so that without any new dam or not creating problems for the existing dam, maybe you can use that. Or you construct a new dam but with a lower height, but transfer this water or convey this water during the monsoon or the post-monsoon period to Tamil Nadu side where the agriculture is developed. And you have storage systems there, you store your water there. So that then with less submergence, Tamil Nadu can get its share of water. But they are not be able to agree on this issues, and it's a very live issue. And for the first time, this whole dam was created a debate about dam decommissioning. In fact, Kerala is now talking about dam decommissioning. Otherwise, like in the US, dam decommissioning is an important is happening. But here, nobody, only some of the environmentalists have been talking about it. But at least today now, some of the mainstream people have also now started talking about decommissioning. So we don't know how this whole thing is going to unfold. But it's a very real issues, and the forum has been able to do some preliminary work in that area. We are still debating what we can do. So this is the second dimension. The third dimension, that's what and then I'll stop here, is that can we do something to prevent water conflicts? The old saying goes, now prevention is better than resolution very often.
Yes.
So what we thought was that there are some of the contentious issues in the water sector in India. If we can build up some type of social consensus broadly about some of these issues, that probably may not give rise to new conflicts. One of the areas is, for example, how do you deal with allocation issues? Because that has been at the core of, and that's one of the learnings which have been facing, that unless we can address the issue of allocation across different water uses. Now, when we say water uses, not only in terms of water uses by the humans, but even by the ecological needs. Environmental flows or ecological flows also need to be built into your overall allocational thing. Unless we come up some type of a plan of that type of thing, some broad principles and methodology, how you do it, and then build social political consensus around it, and also that gets reflected in the policies and type of a thing. Probably you can't prevent conflicts. Now, for example, now if there is a 5% shortage of water or rainfall, and if there is a cut in the, let's say, irrigation use, always there is a conflict. Farmers up in arms against that whole thing. But a similar situation takes place, maybe it's a bad example, but in the US, for example, because I've been told that the first cut is on the agriculture use. They apply an agriculture use. People are not even allowed to even water your own lawns, for example. There's a scarcity type of a thing. But people accept that because there's a social consensus which is built up over years, saying that when there's a shortage, this is how you're going to reallocate water. You don't compromise on your water flows or the fish and other type of thing, because that is people feel that's an important thing to be dealt with. But that type of discussion doesn't take place here. So one of the issues we thought was that we can contribute to this type of policy reorientation to some extent. Can we come up with some type of synthesized understanding about allocation issues? So we set up a working group on that on behalf of forum. We worked for 2.5 years and brought up this report, which was released in Delhi by the Minister of Environment, Jairam Ramesh. It was quite well received and things. So that is one way of contributing to the whole discourse and policy change and type of things, saying that which can have a long-term impact. We are not saying that because of this report things are going to change immediately. No. Yeah. So, but we are trying to see that can we build. This is like a benchmark understanding around which can we now take this up to a lot more people, discuss it out, develop it further, and type of thing, so that there is a consensus around allocation issues.
Yeah.
The second issue is the whole question of institutions and legal issues.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to put this in place, what is the type of present institutional legal issue? Because one of the important lacunae, I would say, is the legal things about water is also pretty embedded in the whole private property concept, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not informed of the whole biophysical and socio-cultural peculiarities of water. It's not informed.
Yes.
I mean, it is true. Second, the institutions also is all very bureaucratic. You don't have any democratic space for people, different stakeholders to come, interact, discuss out the type of water availability, how do you share it, and how to come to agreement and type of a thing. So unless you create nested institutional or democratic institutions at different scales, starting from a village or a micro watershed to sub-basin, basin levels and type of a thing, these conflicts also cannot be addressed. What happens today is that whenever there's a conflict, especially transboundary, the interstate conflict, there's a tribunal which is appointed.
Mm-hmm.
That is the way the central government can intervene. The tribunal takes 15-20 years even to give its verdict. Once that verdict comes also, nobody agrees to that. Even the contending states, they don't, because very often one of the parties are unhappy about it. Kaveri verdict was given, I think, after such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
All the contending states have gone to the Supreme Court today. And Supreme Court has accepted the petition, which they should have done. Because once the tribunal gives, then they should have only approach the tribunal for a review. So similarly, none of the conflicts have been able to resolve and type thing. Other type of minor conflicts are all because of criminal cases, basically, because police case and other type of things. So we don't have a legal institutional framework which can deal with a natural resource type of related conflicts like water. So can we come up with that? So there's a working group working on that. Hopefully we'll get a good report out of them over the next few months. So we thought at least these are two base documents which you can take for a larger dissemination and changing people's mindsets to some extent, reorient the way you conceptualize about water and manage water.
Yeah.
So this is a broad, I would say, one is trying to understand water conflicts through documentation and other type of efforts, work with a couple of active water conflicts to learn from them and see, at least to engage with those type of conflicts, can we come up with a new strategy. Third, can we do something in preventing water conflicts. So these are the broad three areas of our work at the moment.
Thank you. I should give you
Yeah,
a round of
that's a
applause.
broad spectrum which we covered. Yeah.
I have like a couple little. I have several little questions from from
Okay. Yeah.
just embedded within what you just said.
Yeah.
But one of them is that. So you mentioned that some of your work in learning how to prevent water conflicts
Yeah.
is trying to create legal or institutional mechanisms that will help ameliorate it or prevent it altogether. And so I was wondering if there's any sort of attributes that you think would be necessary for nested institutions
Mhm.
in order to make sure that they are functioning to prevent
Right.
conflicts, as opposed to giving more rights to certain stakeholders or etc.
I mean, I would say that there are a couple of attributes which are attributes of preconditions if really if they have to work and if they have to be created and work. One is that the whole question of availability of data and information to people.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think very often why people are not getting an informed debate in India about water or any other similar type of issues is that people really don't get data and good quality data in terms of things. Because there are a whole lot of problems with that. One is that the way the data is collected today, they are not reliable. And if you look at the way the data is being collected today, it's not. Second, this data does not become available to people. People means I'm talking about not people as in an abstract category, whether even people who are living in the villages or even civil society groups or NGOs or anybody who wants to do something along with the people in terms of planning or type of thing, you don't get access to data and things. So unless you democratize the whole question of data,
Mm-hmm.
and you put in systems, you get you spend money and collect good quality data through participatory mechanisms, and you have huge networks of colleges and high schools and type of thing where people can be involved, even collecting rainfall data and other. It doesn't need rocket science to collect this type of data,
Yeah.
but you need an approach and an aptitude to do this type of a thing. So we have been also trying to develop some models, not through forum but through other type of work and how we can do that type of a thing. So I think one of the preconditions if this type of nested institutions or even multi-stakeholder platforms to work, if different contending people have to work, come together, discuss and debate and decide on things. I think one of the major issues which we need to tackle is the whole question of good quality data to be made available to people, either free of cost or in whatever way, so in a usable manner. The second issue is that, and also, see, there is also power relation. When you say that there are different types of stakeholders are going to come together to discuss through nested institutional framework and things. I mean,